Okay, part 3, legalization of marijuana. So I just told you about the histories of alcohol and the history of marijuana, especially as it pertains to the United States. Now, marijuana was legal until 1970, but it was only because it was abused all of a sudden. Prior to 1960, it was rarely used by anyone recreationally. And prior to the 1920s, it wasn't used recreationally in this country at all. Okay? So its history is very short of, not of legalization, but its history of abuse is very short. It really only goes back 60 years. Or if you want to be really technical about it, 80 years, 90 years. That's a lot different than thousands of years. So comparing alcohol, which is used way more, and therefore there are more incidents, bad incidents with alcohol than marijuana, is pretty silly. But let's talk about the effects of marijuana, because another thing the liberals try to do is say that alcohol is so much worse, and in many cases it can be, because it does act differently on the body. It can be fairly quickly made to have negative effects and far more easy access to it, however, is part of the reason. You think legalizing marijuana would make people have less access to marijuana? I don't. Let's talk about the facts. First of all, we have short-term effects of marijuana. Now, this is not something I'm making up. I'm not a doctor. How could I? I looked it up. Lots of different places, not just right-wing websites, by the way. These are medical websites. These are, some cases, pro-legalization websites. There's some things that people just can't ignore, and that sometimes are facts. They try, but they can't ignore it all the time. Short-term effects of marijuana. Distorted perceptions of time and space, which leads to traffic accidents and personal injury. Difficulty thinking and solving problems. Impeded learning. Impeded learning. I wonder if there's a coincidence, which, by the way, I don't believe in, for those of you who hadn't heard that or learned that already. I don't believe in them. You think there's a coincidence that the math scores and other SAT scores and problems with education in this country are going into the toilet during the same period of time that we started to abuse marijuana in the 1960s? Prior to the 1960s, we led the world, or were in the top 10 in the world in student education, in math skills, in technology, and we had homework every night for children. They learned Latin, they learned other languages, they learned civics, they learned all sorts of things that we don't even teach anymore, let alone expect good grades on. And now, of course, we've got some of the dumbest students on the planet in our schools. And you don't think it has anything to do with the timing here? I'm saying it's the only reason. There's a lot of reasons our students are failing. But you don't think this is one of them? Well, then you're an idiot if you do, because if you're thinking that way, because this definitely has something to do with it. And making drugs more legal for adults is only going to make it easier for children. If you thought it was bad before, wait. And I've got facts to prove it. Heavy, long-term use, heavy use of marijuana leads to mental disturbances and psychosis, schizophrenia, anxiety, depression. Does that sound familiar to you? Does it seem like Americans, for the most part, not the most part, but in some parts, you're seeing more depression, more anxiety, more depression, and or more psychosis, mass shootings? Ring a bell? Suicides? Does any of this sound familiar to you folks? Now, there are other drugs that do this, but a lot of it starts with marijuana. They try to tell you it's not a gateway drug. We're going to get into that too. Not only is marijuana addictive, and not only is it dangerous, kills the brain cells, which are the only cells in the body that cannot replenish themselves and regrow, but it is also now much stronger than it was just 20 years ago. Marijuana is. 1983, the average content of THC, which is an ingredient found in marijuana, which is tetrahydrocannabinol, tetrahydrocannabinol was under 4%. That's the toxicity level. In 2008, which is still 9 years ago, it was more than 10%. Hydroponically grown marijuana, which is the stuff that's done indoors because of the stricter laws, is up to 25% more toxic than 20 years ago. And this stuff is often smuggled in from Canada now or grown indoors in the United States. And of course, it takes at least 3 months of rehab to become recommended to become clean of the effects of marijuana use. Constant use. 3 months of rehab. Well, those are the facts, folks. That's history and that's facts. Now, let's talk about the lies and the excuses the left tries to give you about marijuana. Now, the reason I'm saying it, now, some of this may sound like, okay, well, how does that compare to alcohol? It's nowhere near as bad. And I'm not trying to. Because, in my mind, alcohol has nothing to do with this. This is a standalone issue. If something is bad, you deal with it. Just because it's not as bad as something else does not make it not bad. Just because it's not as bad or as dangerous as something else doesn't mean you don't fight against its abuse or its legalization, which leads to abuse, more abuse. I'm sorry. I don't give a rat's ass about alcohol as an excuse for getting stoned. So quit using that excuse. It has nothing to do with alcohol. Some say marijuana is actually non-toxic and cannot cause death by overdose. Well, studies show that the death is not necessarily from ODing on marijuana. It's from the effects of marijuana leading to death. Traffic fatalities. In Colorado, for instance, where they've legalized marijuana, increased from 37 fatalities as a result of marijuana use to 78. And 500 total statewide from 2007 to 2012 in a study of that period of time. Now, it doesn't sound like a lot, and when thousands of people probably died from traffic accidents, but again, from alcohol. But again, I'm not comparing the two. I'm just saying, when they legalized it, the problem got worse. It doubled. Doubled the amount of deaths from before legalization to after. Children in Colorado who were exposed up to 268% more exposure. Age 0 to 5, newborns to 5 years old. From 2006 to 2009 versus, prior to legalization, versus 2010 to 2013. and that is triple the national average of exposure to children that age. In ages 12 to 17, it's up 10%, and that's 39% higher than the national average. Emergency room visits are up 57% in just 2 years. School suspensions and expulsions are up 32%. Because, as I said, just because the adults are now able to make it legal doesn't mean the children aren't going to abuse it more. They do. Pot shipped out of state and seized to states where it is illegal from out of Colorado, a legal state, is up 397% from 2008 to 2013, 4 years ago. Almost 400%. U.S. mail interception of pot before it actually is seized in the state, but seized through the U.S. mail, is up 1,280%. You think it's just controlled in Colorado where it's legal? No. The minute it got legalized, it exploded all over the place. They can't even control the damn stuff. They can't control its growth. They can't control where it is legal and where it's not legal. So the liberals right now are screaming at me going, then make it legal everywhere and you wouldn't have need these statistics. It's like, no, nice try. Then there's the lie that it's not a gateway drug. And what is a gateway drug? It's a drug that leads to worse drugs. Now there's an argument going on, still to this day, that says there's two sides of this issue. Half of the people say that marijuana itself does not have a component in it that makes you take other drugs. It is simply makes it you more easy to get to the next drug rather than going straight to it, because if you're someone who's going to take marijuana, you are someone who's going to take the other drugs anyway. You're just easing yourself into it yourself, not because marijuana made you do it. And the other half of the argument is that marijuana does have an effect on your brain that primes you and makes you more susceptible to desiring other drugs, either because you're getting used to marijuana and the high doesn't get you that high, as stoned as you want, and you have to use other harder drugs to get to that level again, or it actually literally makes you crave those other drugs. To me, the argument is moot. I don't give a damn why you're getting into other drugs. If marijuana is involved, marijuana is a problem. This is all just noise. Is there a casual or a causal relationship, and does it matter? I don't think it matters. Whether it's a casual relationship or a causal relationship, drug use is drug use is drug use. It's all wrong. None of it should be legal. Stop. Just stop. Studies show marijuana primes the brain for enhanced responses to other drugs. Alcohol and nicotine, by the way, also prime the brain. This is an area where they are alike and not disalike. But they haven't figured out which primes the brain more, so don't go down that road. People who use marijuana consume more, not less, legal and illegal drugs than people who do not use it. Right there. Gateway drug. There's the proof. Let me say that again. People who use marijuana consume more, not less, legal and illegal drugs than people who do not use marijuana. That statistic alone proves marijuana is a gateway drug. Whether you can prove it scientifically through the molecular components of marijuana or not, doesn't mean it doesn't still exist. That fact right there proves it. People who are addicted to marijuana are 3 times more likely to be addicted to heroin and 85% more likely to be addicted to cocaine. So why legalize it? All you're asking is for trouble. If marijuana is this benign, perfectly fine, healthy thing to do, why would you open up the possibility that 3 times more people are going to be on opioids and 85% more people are going to be on cocaine? Why would you do that? Why would you do that to people? By legalizing it, you are causing health problems. And you're draining the money it takes to help these people and to reverse the damage they do. And causing more deaths and more health issues, all because you want to get freaking stoned. That's selfish. It's also hypocritical. It's okay to run ads attacking big tobacco, as I've commented many times before. All these BS commercials going after big tobacco. They want to get your children on cigarettes. And now they've got the one where, oh, well, now the vaping is supposedly completely harmless, that we're telling the children, so that's a gateway to cigarettes. Oh, I see. So vaping is a gateway to cigarettes, but marijuana is not a gateway to heroin or cocaine? Because you don't like big tobacco, but you do like marijuana, so one works and the other doesn't work? Is that how that works for you liberals? That's not hypocrisy? It's okay to go and run ads against tobacco because, for selling a legal product. I tell people all the time, if tobacco and cigarettes are so goddamn bad, make it illegal. Pardon my French. Otherwise, shut the hell up. Despite the consequences of young people and children, as they say, but they only have positive commercialization of marijuana, despite the same exact problems. In other words, they go after the cigarette companies because apparently it hurts the children. But they have no problem with marijuana, and it hurts the children just as bad. Or if not equally, because it's not distributed equally, but has the same effects. So why is it okay to hurt the children with marijuana, but not okay to hurt the children with big tobacco? Hypocrisy. Because cigarettes don't make you high. If alcohol and nicotine are the 2 great legal problems that are preventable, why add a third? Why add another legal drug that's going to create problems with drug abuse, children dealing with it, when it's completely preventable by keeping it illegal? Now, don't get me wrong. I understand that even while it's illegal, it still has a problem. But statistics are showing it's worse when it's legal, not better. One of the big arguments about legalized stuff is people wouldn't abuse it anymore. What? No, they go, oh, it would make it easier for people to access. People were accessing it anyway, right? But it's more abused. It's more in the way. It's in the children's faces more. It's a problem. It's worse now in the states that legalized it than before they legalized it. Don't give me this crap about it's going to help all this stuff. It didn't. Statistically provable, didn't. Why add a third problem? If nicotine and tobacco are so bad and alcohol is so bad as the 2 great legal and preventable drugs of abused drugs, why add a third one? Legal, a preventable drug. Why add a third one? As far as I'm concerned, you don't take a step backwards to any issue that you think is right, because it sends the wrong message. You're basically saying, giving people the okay sign to do something that is not right, causes problems, makes you addicted, you abuse the product, it harms children, it costs money to educate, to rehabilitate, to detoxify. It costs lives of people who get in trouble in traffic accidents, and they get stupid. They get the cost of the future of our people and our children not becoming as smart as they could be because of stoned all the time, potentially. The next Einstein might be a stoner and never become the next Einstein. Is that what you want? Wrong is still wrong, even if a lot of people want to do something. I hope some of this made some sense to you, and hope you understand why I vehemently argue against legalization of drugs. It is a cop-out. It is the wrong message to children and to people. It statistically blows everything out of the water, makes it worse, not better. It has nothing to do with alcohol at all. Marijuana does. It leads to other drug use and worse drug use, and it is provable as such. And it's wrong. And if something's wrong, you don't make it right by legalizing it. You just make it worse. See you on the next one.